Hello. This is Mike. I'm kind of unusual. I don't reside in Portland. My parents spent their final years of their lives in Goose Hollow near the intersection of Montgomery and Vista, and they're no longer with us. I attend neighborhood meetings like this just as a way of keeping up with what's going on in Portland for sentimental reasons, even though I don't reside in Portland. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate you coming to this meeting. It's of course open to everybody, and I hope there's something interesting you'll find in this one. Let's see who. Oh, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Jay Griggs. I'm the treasurer for Goose Hollow. I've been in the neighborhood 15 years. I'm an entrepreneur attorney, and first year though on the board.
Jay is our treasurer as well. Okay. So let's see. So first, approval of the minutes, February minutes. Does anyone have any friendly amendments they'd like to make to the minutes before we vote for approval? Yes.
I know they're my own minutes, but there is a gap that we needed to have added. We needed some numbers from you. I should have made it.
Sure, I can provide those. I have the current financials. I don't have past financials without looking it up, but
I wasn't here at the last meeting. I just transcribed Tiffany's notes. So I'll have to look and find out what that amount was, because it wasn't clear from the recording or from her.
Yeah, no worries for now. Then I'm sure we can get that to you.
So I would say let's not approve them yet.
Okay, we'll hold that over until the next meeting. Okay. Next on the agenda is the treasurer's report.
Okay, well, here it goes.
There we
Maybe
go.
there's a link for it. I don't know. Not much to share. I've been working with Tiffany. Is Tiffany on here anymore? No. To understand a little bit, transitioning with Steve. And is Steve around anywhere? Just some coordination that needs to be done that we would want to do today. But the bank account is at $8,655. In the checking, $1,000 in the savings. This month we had the typical exchange where we have radio cab services and expenses offset by our Fred Meyer bottle drop money. And so, as I understand from Tiffany, the goal is to keep that pretty much flush, and it's been that way so far. And we'll probably continue doing the program unless others say otherwise. The only other item that I'm aware of forthcoming is maybe some swag purchases, but I haven't gotten any updates on that, but I guess that's forthcoming. So looks like the money's there if we approve it. So that's all I have to share. Unless there's other questions.
One question.
Yeah.
Might be a question for Tiffany. Where do you get bags for the bottle drop?
That is a question for Tiffany. Thanks, Jerry.
Doug? Are you talking about cherry new ones? Or yeah. Centers. But green ones you just go to Fred Meyer, you know.
Okay. Let's move on to new business. So the first thing I wanted to update some of the events that are kind of happening in the Northwest here, in the Northwest, Neighbors West Northwest, and some of the neighborhood associations in the Northwest and Southwest. One thing that we're working on is coffee with a cop. Now that's kind of a general term. You know, some people like it, some people don't, but it's a way to reach out with the local police in order to know who they are, know what they're doing in the area, make them feel welcome, and also let them understand what sort of issues people are seeing. There's an initiative right now, and this is not technically just West Portland. There's neighborhoods in East Portland also they're working on this. It's to invite police officers to some sort of meeting. Might be coffee, might be a pizza, something along those lines, and through that kind of get a better understanding about those issues that I mentioned a little while ago. I believe the first one that's kicked off here on the west side is in either Old Town or downtown, but someone scheduled it. But Darlene with Neighbors West Northwest with Alan created a spreadsheet in order for people to kind of schedule those things that will be transmitted to, in our case, Central Precinct. I think the first one, the commander of Central Precinct actually went out and one of their sergeants and kind of had an informal, meeting with some people. So I just wanted to kind of let y'all know about that, and also, gauge an interest as to whether we'd be interested in hosting one of these events. So I just wanted to open up that to discussion.
Vadim, this is Scott. I think it was like a day or two ago, I stopped by Neighbors West Northwest offices and talked to Darlene about their first Coffee with a Cop event. And it sounds like that it was very popular and very well received. The one hiccup, and you may have heard about this, it was really kind of a shame, is that when they advertised it with flyers, I think it was in the window of like a coffee shop or a bookstore or something like that, that somebody actually smashed the window into that store. And so now they've decided to not publicize where the Coffee with the Cop is going to take place. I guess it was a coffee shop, because they advertised saying, hey, we're going to have Coffee with a Cop at our coffee shop here on such and such a date. And someone took offense to that and smashed the window in. So unfortunately, it's something, if we do schedule it, that needs to be kind of under wraps. And it pains me to say that, because it seems just so ridiculous that we need to keep this to ourselves, but just something to keep in mind that they did have problems with
No
that.
windows.
Yeah, exactly.
Publicized in a place with no windows.
They'll find a way.
Put it on a brick wall.
I attended the meeting with Darlene and a police officer and several other people. Tiffany couldn't attend, and one of the goals was to find a new name for that Coffee with Cop, because apparently somebody's got a copyright, maybe there's some kind of conflict. It's a national program. So what the name, actually it was the police officer there who was remote, came up, we were talking about it, and I said, well, we need something like Talk with the Cops. Nobody seemed actually that mad about using the word cop, even the cops. There wasn't a big deal. So when he came up with, I said conversation, he said, I said convocation, he said convos. Convo is a word meaning conversation. So tentatively,
Convo or connect with the cop, like alliteration.
that would be another, but we say convos with a cop, just to make it, change it. And then all the cops there, at least the one there, had to go to another meeting a half hour later. Commander Dobson wasn't there. So that was just one idea, to change the name of it. So, but the police officers I've talked to have used a lot of lingo, names for things. And they're not worried about cops, they're worried about other bad names. They like to be called police, law enforcement. That's all. There's a possibility the name will change if Darlene, if I talk to the neighbors.
Yeah, the spreadsheet I looked up has convos with the cops, so that's exactly what it's become apparently.
Did she put an E in there? Convos? CONVOS is convos. Convos. Anyway, that's what she used. She was, it seemed to be a good name.
Well, I like the idea. I had to support the exchange, what kind of resources would it require of us as far as hosting? What would it financially, time-wise, personnel?
So it'd just be volunteers. They're asking for it to be a small group of individuals. So this is not something that, the whole neighborhood would be invited to. It's just more of, people in the area that have an interest in, building that relationship for whatever reason. It would not cost anything. In fact, there are organizations that have offered to pay for any cost. So if there was like a pizza involved, we can get that paid for. But for a coffee, it'd just be people paying for their own coffee, basically. It'd be something that'd be like an hour long, how people would want to gather together and actually talk about coffee. So there's no agenda. It's a meet and greet, basically. Certainly in organizations I sit with, it's nice to hear what the police are doing. We heard about what they did, what Central Precinct did in Old Town to dramatically shrink the crime rate in that area. They had like a focused monitoring of what was happening in Old Town, and apparently it got quite a bit of some good results. And now they're working in Central East Side, and same thing. So they explain kind of what they do and what issues they're seeing, what kind of arrests they're making. It gives you a kind of a better idea as to what's going on in your neighborhoods. And so I think that'd be a good idea. This is not something that needs to be sponsored by Goose Hollow, Foothills League. This is not something that, needs to be paid for any sort of way. It's just that we want to reach out and have that, be a voluntary opportunity for people to attend.
How big of a venue do you think we would need? Like, what would be kind of like, it's so hard to project, like, capacity wise.
Like a dozen people.
Like a dozen people, because my immediate thought was Pizza Cat. Like, they have that really nice venue. If it wasn't raining, they have that nice back patio.
Well, now that we're being recorded with Pizza Cat being the recommendation, it can't be Pizza Cat because their windows will get broken.
But I just think, do we want to send the message? I mean, we could ask them and let them know, but I think our relationship with the police is something to be proud of. But you guys know how I stand on that.
Yeah. And this is something that I think people feel very positive about it, both in what I've heard so far, the results from Downtown Neighborhood Association, as well as from the police. This is a way to build, positive relationships. And so I'm all for it. I think it's great. And it's a shame that there's some criminals out there that seek to silence people by destroying property.
I think a few days ago, Superjoy, that coffee shop that we love, just had their window smashed in like 2 days ago. And they're not hosting anything. So who knows? It could have been random. I don't know if it was targeted because of the police, but they just had their window smashed in.
It happened during the coffee with the cop.
It happened before. So this was in, I believe, in Northeast. There was a coffee shop that they sponsored it. So it wasn't like a neighborhood association or, just common interest people, but they put a sign outside saying coffee with a cop on such and such a date. And early in the morning, I think before they opened up, somebody broke their windows. And then the police came and they actually helped sweep up the glass and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it sets a precedent. I don't think that this is something endemic, but we don't want anybody to be unnecessarily spotlighted by elements that feel like people should not be able to talk or meet with individuals. Okay, so let's see. I'll check with our parliamentarian. Scott, do we need to think about any of this if we just kind of decide to schedule something and have random people attend?
Are you talking about like a COP event?
Yeah.
I think it makes sense, especially since it caused problems with the last location, just to get people on record for it.
Okay. So the motion I have is for Goose Hollow Foothills League to reach out to establishments and Central Precinct to find a time and a place where individuals could meet with Central Precinct officers to talk about matters that affect our neighborhood. Do I have a second? And everybody, all yays?
Yay.
Any noes? Any abstentions? Okay, and so that gets passed, and Lori raised her hand, so. Okay. And Lori, did you want to chat or was that your vote?
I was just voting.
Thank you. So next is Neighborhood Summit recap. On March 9th at 6:30 p.m. at the Laurelhurst Club, I organized with the help of TJ Browning and Laurelhurst, the Neighborhood Summit. Used 2 email lists that I feel reached pretty much every neighborhood association, at least reading through it, and I hope I didn't miss any, but we reached out to as many neighborhood associations as possible, invited up to 2 representatives from each neighborhood association. And we got an overwhelming response. 60 neighborhood associations RSVP'd, attended actually, and I think there's actually 62 that RSVP'd. And 100 people, individuals RSVP'd. So some neighborhood associations had 2 people, some had 1, but out of those 60 neighborhoods, 100 people RSVP'd to be there. Dan Ryan, Commissioner Dan Ryan appeared and made a brief statement, but stayed throughout the whole conversation. We also had TJ McHugh, who is the new acting director of Office of Community and Civic Life. And for those that may be new, that's the city bureau that is charged with working with neighborhood associations and funding coalitions and helping outreach and that sort of thing. There's been some bad blood, I should say, in the past with the way that they manage that, but now there's a new individual in charge, and Dan Ryan has a 90-day plan to revitalize those communications between neighborhood associations and the city. So prior to that, prior to the meeting, we sent out a survey to everybody that responded. And that survey asked various questions, what are the priorities in your neighborhood? What kind of things are you concerned about? Have you had outreach with the city or any other entities to deal with these concerns? Have they been positive or negative? And so on and so forth. What we saw was, perhaps not too unexpected, public safety issues were at the top of a lot of people's minds, specifically break-ins, car thefts, those sort of things, livability issues, homelessness. A lot of people were concerned about that. The best way to actually address a situation in a compassionate but effective way. Parking, the parking people had a lot of votes as well. Apparently, there's a lot of neighborhoods that reach out to the parking people, whether there's illegal cars or otherwise. I suppose that's.
Who are the parking people?
I guess the city has like a parking person.
Oh, like Parks and Rec?
No, parking, like parking on the streets.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I don't know what the agency is called or what that division of whatever bureau is called, but something about parking.
I've seen the little trucks that go around like
It's part of the.
Okay.
The up until about 5 years ago, it was 2 people.
Oh,
And then there was the parking enforcement folks, that was something separate, but, yeah, basically 2 folks, decided where neighborhood parking, could be or not. And we're actually in charge of where meters of a certain, duration could be. It's a huge job that was stuck on 2 folks. Now I think it's about a dozen.
So, yeah, and that surprised me as well. I guess we do have that here, especially in the stadium district, but not something I've ever dealt with through the neighborhood association, but maybe people have.
We have two neighborhood parking districts.
Mhm.
One is, the Goose Hollow, district, and then there's one on Canada Ridge.
Okay.
It's separate. It's our responsibility to make recommendations to the parking people at Peabody as to whether we want the hours shortened or extended, whether we want parking on Sunday or not, and whether, or not, people that simply own property or are employees should have the same parking rights as residents. So we've got some responsibilities there.
Is there anywhere in Goose Hollow that doesn't require a parking permit? Like everywhere that I see says like you need a zone A permit to park on the street.
It's a well-kept secret if that's the case.
It's pretty much everywhere.
There's places where it says 2 hour, where, so yes, visitor permissions,
Yeah.
and then. But I don't, still need enforcement. Any place that there's, some other sign, handicap parking only, 2 hour parking, loading zones,
Car
those
shares, that
those
sort of-
are not, residential parking permit places. Let's see,
It's okay.
other than.
Yeah,
those
sorry, I'm
and-
asking for
and where there
details,
are
maybe.
organizations, I think everything else in the neighborhood actually is.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen any where you can park anywhere, but I don't know if I've been looking for that. I've seen 4 hours, which is pretty good. The livability was the main thing that is concerning to neighborhood associations. 21.6 individuals said that was their main concern. That's typically homelessness, but some people may have a different definition of livability. I think, it could mean a lot of things, so we need to delve into that a little bit. Personal safety was the second. 17.6% felt that personal safety was the main issues affecting their neighborhood. Let me see, and the third is tied between thefts and break-ins and availability of services. So, and one of the running themes was the difficulty in having communication with the city and having the request for services being met by the city. We kept hearing that over and over again, that people would reach out and not hear back or not get the level of support that they needed.
And that's supposed to be one of the jobs of the Office of whatever it is, community involvement or civic something or civic life.
Mhm.
Section 3.21 of the city code covers that and basically says it's the responsibility of the bureaus to maintain contact with specifically the neighbor or just with citizens through the neighborhood associations. It's the responsibility of the office now of civic life, I guess, to make sure that happens.
Okay.
That whole process has been just sort of ignored for 6 or 7 years.
That's the difficulty we've been having for sure. And so next we asked, over the last year, have you or other neighborhood associations contacted any of the following and around the issues? And so Portland Street response, about 20% of neighborhoods have reached out. Portland Police, a much larger, over 40% of the people said that they had reached out. There's also some people that didn't answer, but Park Patrol, I guess that's what it's called, received a pretty high reached out rating. Fire Bureau, parking enforcement, okay. The Park Patrol is a little different. And the behavioral health unit, not as many people have reached out to that. That's as I understand the BHU, that's part of the police that deals with people with mental health crises. Although the county has one version of it, the sheriff's office has one version of it, and then the city has one version of it. So it's kind of, I don't think people reach out to the county as much as they should on some of these issues, but BHU is with the PPD. And then if yes to previous questions, how helpful was your organization in addressing your needs? So Portland Street Response received a few more unhelpful votes than helpful votes. Portland Police received way more helpful votes than unhelpful votes by a very large margin. So very helpful was up there. Somewhat helpful was even higher. And then very little, much less, like I'd say a third or a quarter. Not at all helpful or no response at all. Park Patrol was fairly helpful. The BHU mixed results there. Parking enforcement was somewhat helpful for the most part. But what was surprising is people have like, maybe not surprising, I mean, but surprising based on at least some of the narratives that we've heard in the past. People were very helpful, very happy with the police response. Overwhelming majority of people thought they were either somewhat helpful or very helpful in responding to these needs.
The Peabot wasn't on that list, right?
Peabot directly was not on that list, and I know there's a lot of people, especially on the east side, that are not very happy with some of those things. But and when asked, can you name? Well, that's. So in any case, one of the things that we heard, so we heard 4 basic areas. One is public safety. One is livability, including homelessness. One is dealing with sort of the government. How do we get our needs met through our government? How do we feel heard? How do we feel responded to, and ensure that that's something that is at the forefront? And the 4th one is sort of building community type of desires. You know, how can we learn from one another? How maybe one neighborhood is very successful in doing something. How can we learn about that and not reinvent the wheel in some ways? And how can we work together in a better way along those lines? So basically, we broke up the individuals into 4 separate groups. We had, I believe, 12 tables, 8 tables into 4 sections. Each table had 12 chairs. There were some people standing up, but for the most part, those tables were filled. Or the tables were filled, and there was like some standing room. You know, I had a chance of going from table to table to kind of hear what people are talking about. And it's really amazing the work that the neighborhood associations are doing. Y'all know this, you've been here quite a while. You know, Tiffany, you know, is not here right now, but you hear about some of the updates on her side. But we heard from people that were checking on the Portland Police website and noting where the crimes were happening, using heat maps so they would understand in their neighborhoods where the crimes were, so they could either do some sort of foot patrol or follow up or whatever. They'd know like where the crime areas were happening in their neighborhoods. And that individual from Argay Heights, I think the neighborhood is called. By the way, I learned about a whole bunch of new neighborhoods I didn't really know existed up until now. High Noon, which is the Hayden Island neighborhood.
That's
something.
a cool neighborhood.
It's a cool neighborhood, right? It's a cool name. So in any case, they said that they'd be willing to share that. In fact, if anybody wanted that help in their neighborhood, that individual said that he would actually do that for another neighborhood if asked. You know, there were people dealing with, obviously, people living on the streets and providing services and helping linking the services, individuals that were doing a great job in fundraising, getting grants for their neighborhoods. You know, getting things like lighting for areas that were blighted in order to keep crime away. A lot of success stories. So it was very heartening to hear that. And so at these breakout tables, and Forrest, maybe if you can chime in, because you actually sat in one of these. Tiffany and Forrest represented Goose Hollow, and I was just kind of like a random walking around person. But we took notes. We had a note taker and a facilitator at each table, and kind of got a sense of what people were doing, what their interests were, what their needs were. And then at the end of the evening, We put these pages up on the wall. People had little sticky buttons, and then they put them up next to whatever they felt should be addressed down the road. And we got a lot of really spirited discussion about this kind of stuff, a lot of good votes. Took down those votes to see which ones merited attention. And, right now I have a table in front of me with all these votes. And, I still need to compile because there's some similarities and overlap, at least in some of these things. And then the next step forward is to actually bring people together that are interested in some of these matters, get subject matter experts to talk with them. We already had an outreach from the city and Michael Jordan on some of the districting issues. And if anybody, that's also one of the things that got a response and at these tables. And he offered himself, he's the chief administrative officer for the city, to meet with individuals that would be interested in learning what the city is doing for the charter changes and how that would affect the neighborhood associations, to actually have that discussion. So those are the kind of things that we'll be doing going forward, and then create a plan for how to get those needs met, and then ensure that our elected officials at the city, county, and if needed at the state level. We have a lot of feedback on Measure 110. I don't know if that's one of the main issues, but as far as some of the ancillary effects. And so, how can we work together to improve our city? Forrest, do you want to add anything to all that?
Well, I had to leave a little bit early, but
Shane?
How many hours was this then?
8.
There's like post-its and stuff.
6:30 to 8.
there was not a moment to spare.
1.5 hours. We kept it on time. We finished about like minutes late.
Yeah, there was, where that was at the front, but someone was keeping us on task. But I was at one of the livability tables, and we went around, did a little intro and said, what's the biggest livability issue in your neighborhood? And ours essentially came down to communication and knowing who to go to when there's a problem. There was a connection between, I think it's some of the resources in Vancouver, Washington, where they have a resource center. And no matter what kind of resource it is that you need, you can go there and they'll put you to the next window or the next table. You don't have to fall across town and try to hope that someone is open. It's this ideal location where everything is there.
That's very centralized.
Yes. I did see recently that Mike Schmidt put a sort of like volunteer at, here's one of the public libraries, just like a catch-all, go to this person and they'll point you in the right direction instead of just wandering around and staying on the website. Sometimes it's just easier to talk to someone in person.
The central library just closed, it's been closed for almost a year. So they used to have a social worker. That's where I used to sit. But
This for repairs of some kind.
I guess
Construction, we don't know.
they had some construction on the front facade, walkway, I think, but that is trivial. They've had security problems there.
Well, Vadim, thanks for the update. I think it's fantastic. One of the main questions is what's going to happen with all this. I mean, there's value in having community members connect. I don't know when the last time this has been done. Is this an annual thing, or will it be, or is it a one-time summit?
Yeah, so, we'll have to see how that pans out. I very much like to keep this an annual thing. I think in the past, the Office of Neighborhood Involvement had a whole one-day summit where they would invite, I think the world, but you could go there and talk about some of these issues. They have presentations. Something like that. Yeah, I tracked down one and I couldn't find an agenda really, but it was an ONI thing at that point in time. ONI has certainly stopped doing that, or Office of Civic Life. So whether it's through the city or, kind of an organic thing like this, there's too much, goodwill and good nature and good ideas for it to be lost by siloing people. And I think, that's certainly a problem that the city recognizes internally, but I think this is also something, whether planned or not, is happening in our neighborhoods, which is we're all kind of dealing with similar issues, but we're all dealing with them by ourselves. And so the next step is, of course, to form committees where people who want to volunteer their time will be able to meet and kind of work on these things. And then, within 6 months, I'm hoping less than that, but I'm being realistic and time frames and getting people together to meet. We'll have a plan of action for each one of those 4 initiatives, whether it's public safety, how can, we feel safer on our streets and make sure that crime is addressed, quickly and efficiently. Livability issues, how can we keep graffiti off our buildings? Or if it is there, have it be cleaned up within a reasonable period of time. Some of these other issues like, why do we have to pay for taxis for homeless individuals to get to their shelters? Why is this not something that's happening that our city is doing or service providers are doing? Some of these things that I think neighborhoods are tackling individually needs to be better coordinated. And then, how do we ensure that there's this spirit of communication and, between the city and the neighborhood associations going forward. So it's not just depending on, which leaders in charge, but, in the future, there's like a plan to make sure that that's part of the social fabric of our city.
Yeah, that's actually my primary thought is, so where does that go? I mean, it's great to have the communities all connect. That's the first part. But the city and the county and the state, they're all working on a lot of these same issues. I mean, so how do we interconnect with them, not step on their toes, but also, not waste the data that you've just documented? I mean, you have some information, maybe this can be helpful, but not if it's not given in a way that they need or can use, and that sort of thing. So,
Yeah.
Is there any way that, I mean, I know, so Dan Ryan shows up, I mean, he's there giving his, vision or whatever, but I mean, who are the little guys that are going to actually take these ideas and implement them somehow? If it isn't the communities, is the city interested? Do we have these points of contact?
We have the points of contact. The city is interested. The county, there's a question mark there, but we know who to reach in the county to do this. We know who the people, we just need to get enough momentum at this point. And I feel that there is. I feel that there's going to be lots of people that will want. In fact, even after the meeting, I got an email saying, whatever the next step is, include me going forward. And we'll broaden it out. So it's not just 100 people that came to this. It will be other people that can volunteer. So I'm more concerned about the manageability of the number of people than I am people not being interested in this. But, all the dots are there. I know who the people are. I know, who the interested parties are. But we need to sit down, do like a 90-day plan. So, or 120-day plan or whatever that might look like. And so we need to have, a certain X number of meetings to get from point A to point B. Those meetings will have people that are working in these areas to provide input from the city or the county, or explain, what we're missing, what phone numbers are we not calling, whatever. And then we go to City Hall, we go to the county commission, our board of commissioners, and we present this plan and saying, this is the plan that a bunch of people from all over Portland have come together and, what are you going to do about it?
Great.
It's an obvious point, but I'd like to emphasize even more. We have officials elected and otherwise, we call them bureaucrats. Many of them have their own agenda. And they will, some of those people are very, very stubborn and they will get in there because they have control of the purse strings. And they will slow walk things. It's not, and that has, of course, has to be aware of. Of course, I'm being antagonistic, but it's very true that there's people who have ideas how they would want to do it, and they think it's their job. So the volunteers have to be aware of that.
And that was one of the reasons initially to kind of have it be a grassroots effort rather than asking Civic Life to do this. Is, we heard a lot of complaints from neighborhoods. It really was quite contrasting what people thought of the coalitions. And there's some neighborhoods that love the coalitions. And then I learned there's some neighborhoods that hate the coalitions because they feel it's a top-down approach, that they're being told what they should be focusing on rather than being heard what their needs were and being supported in those needs. And so, that's the fine walk to do. The coalition's actually Neighbors West Northwest and Southeast Uplift, to their credit, came to this and sat and listened, and I've heard positive feedback from that angle as well. But I didn't realize how much of a disagreement there were within these coalitions about the support that they were receiving, and certainly that's an issue that people need to deal with in their coalitions, I suppose. But we want to make sure that these neighborhood voices are heard, and not that somebody that's basically at the city level is determining what the outcome will be.
There's never been a consistent policy voice from whatever you want to call it, civic life, pony, whatever. Every time there's a commissioner change, the policies change very substantially in that bureau in particular, because it's policy driven. It's not driven by whether or not there's a curb and sidewalk on some street. The fact that the coalitions are so very, very different, particularly in the way that they approach the constituent neighborhoods in that coalition, is a direct result of that policy stew that just has sort of percolated over the years. I think you're on exactly the right track. You're basically doing what I was part of a bunch of people in the middle 70s when I was a commissioner's assistant did. Some of those folks are still around. Mike Lindbergh was my office partner, and he's still around. He's still a pretty powerful voice. Aged memory here, but I can probably provide you with another half dozen folks that are also not without some influence and have those same ideas about let's give the people a voice and at the same time connect them with the folks around them, create some power in the neighborhoods.
Yeah, and there's a lot of good people that came out of the woodwork that have had that experience, and certainly I try to learn, but there's a lot out there. So kind of going through it all and learning best practices, and Mike is great, and still is out there, trying to do what he can for the city. Anyways, I've taken up a lot of time with this. I was going to read through some of these results, but you'll see an email come out hopefully by tomorrow with how the voting went.
That's a lot of work. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So some of these got a lot of votes, but in any case, that'll come out pretty shortly. Okay, so next is Neighbors West Northwest and funding. So I'll make this pretty quick. We don't need to vote on this or anything, but Neighbors West Northwest every year has to ask the city for its budget, and part of that budget is saying, well, here's how we're going to be supporting the neighborhood associations, at least as I understand it. So they're asking for kind of and Scott, did you have to do this before? There's a request out there about information as to what sort of events or things that we'll be doing to send to Darlene. And my question was going to be if anybody has any ideas for the next year that they would like us to participate in, certainly the street fair and things like that, but anything else, so I can give it to Darlene and she uses that for her funding request. And I think that request, we're waiting for Civic Life to kind of give us some templates or something, which they haven't. So it's not an immediate sort of thing, but did you do that last year?
The only thing that the coalition needed from us in terms of planning going forward was for insurance. And so if we were to tell them we were going to have a public event where we were expecting 200 people and there's going to be alcohol served, that they needed to know that in order for it to be written into the insurance policy that covers the neighborhood. But in terms of funding, no. Funding would be, just individual, grants or something like that we would write. So everything that we had to submit to them around this time of year was in the context of insurance.
Okay. Just so we can get back to Darlene in some sort of way, I mean, I kind of have an idea about some things we've done in the past that we will be doing again. But if anybody wants to see us doing something novel, unique, interesting, different, and something that, certainly we're all volunteers here, but maybe, we need Neighbors West Northwest to help coordinate, and that could be, the email newsletter, we can get some support for that, website, whatever it might be.
Good idea. Online support, I just think the expectations, with Zoom alone, we weren't able to kind of afford that and manage that. So I just think the tech end of things, whether it's website management, support with online outreach, such a huge component. And we have really valuable assets in some of our volunteers who have that skill set. But if they're a resource and they have funds, then any kind of online support, again, web interface, email outreach, content management of any kind would be super helpful. I don't know how they manage our list or how we manage our list. Like, is that ever swept or cleaned? Like, do they buy, do we buy email addresses? No. Okay. Do we have addresses for postcards? Where do we get all that information? I just think if they had a data person or if they had a web person who could help us, that would be tremendously helpful. I don't know. We could do that. That might just be a hope and a dream. And I'm sorry, I can't contribute more, but it seems like that's the piece that's lacking. We have people that want to be involved and engaged, but we need technical skills, and we're going to burn out the people that have them. I think. That's my 2 cents.
Intern, yeah. That'd be someone in Lincoln that wants to.
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
Like the grant thing. I don't know if they would have someone who could specialize in grants or even just be a consultant for a little bit. I don't know if anyone saw that on the way it was dark. But yeah, any kind of consulting on grants or even support on the back end for the web, the technical stuff really helpful.
I think Old Town has an intern or something like that helps them with their grants. So an intern would be great. If we get somebody from, PSU or something, I think, yeah, we can reach out to them and find out, but I can also reach out to Jesse and see how they pulled in their individuals. They're working a little differently because they have some of the business interests involved.
Does Northwest help funnel that and vet those people, or how does that stuff happen?
Not to my knowledge, and I'm new to that, but there's a couple different grant mechanisms in Neighbors West Northwest, and Forrest will have something to say about that, I think, and maybe I'll chime in, but I'm trying to understand exactly how that grant stuff works, because when I heard about the grants that were authorized, I wasn't really sure. I'm trying to understand what the process is and what the criteria and who decides that, because I think it'll be helpful down the road.
Yeah, because what you said about communication being really important, just from your meeting on the 9th. As far as comms go, we have Scott, and we have our comms are very fragile and limited to 2 people who volunteer. And so I don't know if when we think about recruiting new board members or we think about any kind of resources that are offered to us, we need more of those skill sets and people at the time that can help us.
And speaking of which, perfect timing. Tiffany's downstairs. I'm going to go open the door. Oh, thank you. And it's so yeah. If anybody has any thoughts, I mean, I think those are the low-hanging fruit. But if you can think of anything else, just email me and I'll include that in our package. I don't think this is anything that's directly going to get us help or funding, but it'll ensure that Neighbors West Northwest gets their 300,000 or whatever they get for doing their work.
Yeah, so first bit is the secretary role has been expanded And now includes distributing the newsletter. I'm not sure if you all saw that, but my name is at the top now. So no, we don't buy email addresses. I did get one friend to sign up for it last night. He lives outside of Goose Hollow. So just pray he never shows up. So yes, taking over newsletter. You probably saw the email about getting agenda items. I have a reminder for myself to start soliciting for those items 2 weeks in advance, so you can start getting them closer to ideally a week ahead of time. The type of agenda items is also the location and the Zoom details. I don't have that information. So on top of that, it seems that I'm doing a lot of grants for us lately. There was one for the tote bag that went to Neighbors West Northwest for $1,400. So we could get 300 of the tote bags for $390 for each. There were also freight charges and setup charges. Once I hear back about funding, then I'll send an updated image to Bridget because we needed to have the Neighbors West Northwest logo on there as well as office, community and civic life. If we come in over budget, that's just too bad. And if it's under, we have to give back all of it, unless it's within, I think, like $20 or something. Thankfully, Bridget did a lot of the work to get the information together, so it wasn't fairly difficult assembling that grant. And there was another grant that was submitted to Prosper Portland. That one was for $4,533.81. Thank you, Lori, for sending me the budget details and even calling to make sure that I understood what I was looking at. Because we held that last year on September 17th, that just happens to be the same day as another templates event this year. We're just going to use the same date, reuse the same postcards that we did last time. And I basically just took the whole budget from last time and added a whole 5% and slight adjustments for expected audience because of the Timbers game. That was supposed to be voted on by, or framing, I'm getting my grants mixed up. The one for the tote bags, the vote was delayed until April 12th because they didn't have reached quorum at Neighbors West Northwest. The other one, I think, is at the end of this month. I'll have to check that date. So that'll get tote bags for promo items to encourage visitors, hand out at this.
Thank you for doing all this.
Yeah, thank you.
That's like, no necessary work, and we always have people with opinions, and it's very few people that have the gumption to like grind it out and produce it. So thank you.
It was a fun adventure, and one thing that I
Good at
realized while doing that is half of the battle was finding the information. I discovered later that our email is run on the back end by Gmail. And I thought it would be great if we just put this stuff in Google Drive. And then when there's a new secretary or treasurer or something, we can just.
I could keep all the stuff there so we could update it every year, and then people aren't in the dark and they don't have to go through all their favorite emails. And updates for Goose holidays.
Yeah,
That's
and
what
we
we
could,
do.
free up some hard drive room on Scott's computer. We did a working session to go over the newsletter. There's a lot of stuff in there. Thank you, Scott. And again, just getting to election time, you can just hand off the password and that's it.
Yeah, kudos. I've never used that word in my life, so let me change that. Thank you so much for doing all this. It really is important. We are kind of building a framework where whoever takes over after us will be able to, have a lot of resources and a lot of things that kind of will make life easier. Because I think from what I'm seeing, there's some neighborhood associations have gotten quite a bit of grants and funding for things that they're doing. We're kind of the scrappy neighborhood that's kind of doing a shoestring budget, and ourselves are out there manning tables and doing what have you. And so I think it'd be really beneficial if we can actually hire people or pay for hands or whatever. And that's the goal, and Forrest will get us to the promised land. And Forrest is not nodding, but maybe agrees. So let's see, I'll have a little bit more to say in the Neighbors West Northwest update about some of this. So we'll go 7, let's see what things are. Kind of. Okay, so committee reports, public safety, perfect timing, Tiffany, welcome. So Tiffany, by the way, we voted to have you be on the grant writing committee and yeah. I told you, but go ahead.
Sorry I'm late. My son goes to Central Catholic. I know. I won the lottery scholarship last year for their tuition, and so we are Central Catholic, and they moved their name from.
Oh my God, Tim Murphy.
Yes.
You got it.
Okay, anyway, so tonight's meeting is pretty important. So I'm here now, and I'm sorry I'm late, but for the public safety meeting, Doug and I are both, by the way, can we make a correction on the agenda? Lori is not public safety chair, visibility chair, it's Doug.
Oh, yeah, I'll make a note of that.
I thought that was
Just
an
for the record.
template.
That's okay. Lori, I'm sure you'd like to be off of that board, right?
Yeah,
Before you
I was
back,
gonna
Laura.
mention that as well, that
Oh, did you already? Okay.
need to be
Right.
changed.
But people try to leave.
I'll try to keep this meeting on schedule, but in a nutshell, this month for public safety, we went in tandem with the Downtown Neighborhood Association where they held a forum on homelessness, unsheltered, whatever have you. They invited guest speakers to speak. For some of you who were at that meeting, it was pretty insightful, very interesting. It ran about an hour and a half. We have the recorded minutes to that if someone did not see that. And they also gave a report on the behavioral health center that opened up down there. And they had topics ranging around fentanyl, the sanctioned camping, the state of downtown in general. And all the 6 neighborhoods were represented there. That was the Northwest District, Pearl District, Old Town, Chinatown, Japantown, Downtown Neighborhood Association, and Goose Hollow and Southwest Hills was in presence. So good questions there. Vadim, you were there as well. Did we get the summary? Did I get you the video on that? The recording?
I saw an email about it, yeah.
Okay, should we share that in our minutes tonight? I can forward that along if I haven't already sent it. I can't remember if I did or not.
For the other one,
The Downtown Neighborhood Association
should
meeting.
they be part of their minutes, not just link to that?
Well, we shared and they did a collaborative effort.
I can take it back. I saw your request for that video. I didn't see a response.
Okay, I'll get it. Just because that's what we did for public safety. And then the other half of there's 3 facets to public safety this month was that DNA meeting where we talked about homelessness with the guest speakers, but also to Vadim Mazursky held the neighborhood summit. And a few of us were representatives there, and we talked a lot about livability, safety, and what have you. And I'm sure Vadim already gave you gave the summary on that, right? Okay.
Yeah, got it.
Okay. And then
Too long, apologies, but yeah.
that was fascinating, actually. We should do more of that. And then Doug, my partner here, he stood in on a meeting for the coalition, Neighbors West Northwest Coalition. Thank you very much. On crime prevention, right? Yeah, and I'll go ahead and just pass the baton over to you.
Well, basically, it was a very short meeting. It wasn't, they had another meeting right after that law enforcement meeting downtown with the commander. So that drew a lot of people away. And so we had to, as I mentioned, we had the renaming or attempted renaming the Coffee with Cops to Coffee with Communists, and talked a lot about the problems and Darlene trying to keep in communication with people. It's hard for her, and they're moving. So, they're moving to a better, bigger space.
Just for clarification, Darlene Garrett is the director of Neighbors West Northwest. She is in charge of kind of corralling all 13 neighborhoods that were a part of NWNW for everybody who's been here.
And so the meeting ended up pretty quickly. But next time.
Just to piggyback off of that, today I was a part of a meeting with Mike Schmidt and also Commander Dobson and also Chief Lavelle, about kind of the state of affairs of where we're at this present time. And just as a quick synopsis, it's budget season. They're going to city council and the county looking for funding. And obviously Mike Schmidt's in an election season as well. So he's looking around the room to see who's going to be with him. And so, but in a nutshell, my biggest questions for when I advocate for our neighborhood is, are we gonna see any services that will help our neighborhoods this year? And right now, on the police side, they're doing a pretty good job of police recruitment, but those people that got recruited, it'll take up to 2 years to get them actually into full speed. So to me, that's considered a holding pattern. And so meanwhile, we're seeing an uptick of car theft, burglaries, residential and commercial, and it's really hard times right now. So that is, and so next month, the president of PSAC will be hosting PSU to do their findings on residential burglaries and commercial burglaries. And I'd like to see, that's kind of what I said to them is, what are we going to do about the livability crimes? And so, so at this point, Central Precinct literally has what, don't quote me, I think 17 staff and maybe 4 per shift. And they have to triage homicides. And right now that is their biggest ask is we need to build up our homicide team, and their traffic enforcement was their next ask. Because I was like, I can't hear what you're really asking for. Do I need to get that hard copy for budget? And how does city council, what do they think about it too? And yeah, and so to me, that means traffic enforcement that is good for people who are interested in speeders and what have you. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of needs that are not getting met at the residential level. And so that's something that Doug and I need to, and all of us actually need to advocate for. So if you go to these meetings, that's probably what I'm going to be focused on. And then from the DA perspective, this county has asked them every department over there to maybe potentially do a cutback. But just to let you know, city budget didn't take any cutbacks this year. And the county didn't either, but they're asking for next year's cycle to maybe cut back. I think it's like a 5% or something that our DA's office can't afford to take any more, right? I mean, geez Louise, we're already triaging.
This is I've announced this online to various people. This is the start of the traveling campers migration to Portland. And police, of course, are aware of that, but to deal with that, they have to react quickly. And if they don't have the people, they take up residence and that's it. But,
so next,
this is not a vacation spot for the summer for people from San Francisco who are trying to avoid it once. That's what it comes down to.
So I think next month for our Goose Hollow safety livability, one of my biggest focus points will be the sanctioned camping. I am a part of those meetings on the ADA lawsuit. You're going to see Mayor Wheeler. We are coming to a conclusion on the mediation piece, whether it's mediated in court or if it goes to trial, right? City of Portland is going to try to conclude on the mediation point, and then Mayor Wheeler is going to come out with this full plan, which he's already starting to already. So I think we should talk about how that is going to roll out in our communities, and I'm sure Vicky is probably going to put that on the agenda next month in terms of where these camps are going to go and how communities respond to that in a mindful way, right? Because communities need to be able to have adequate public safety standards as well as our unsheltered folks as well. So that's probably what we're going to see next month. And yeah, that's about it.
One issue, the woman who got on the livability and had problems with the intersection of Vista and Park. She had family issues, and she finally called me back today. And we talked about it, and I was as sympathetic as I could because I know that intersection is blind. She said she was walking her dog and she almost got hit by a truck coming around from the bridge, turning down Park. And apparently they just don't see people. And what can you do? Well, we were talking to Darlene about this. There are cities who don't allow right-hand turns on red. You know, it's perfectly normal. A lot of people don't even know they can. You've ever been behind them. That particular intersection is blind, and it also it already has a crosswalk delay on it. So, and she says it's like the third time she's had problems. Like, so that's an issue we can talk about. I don't know if we're able to recommend, you know, turn on red signs in the city. I don't know if that comes out. But
You're talking about crossing across the Vista.
in this case, it was Cross Vista as she,
I mean, it doesn't hurt to.
you know, she was coming, the guy was coming, I assume, it was coming from the bridge, turning right down
Mhm.
Park. And she was trying to walk across Park.
And that's been an area with a lot of people mentioning as being problematic. The right on turn, the no rights on red, if I remember what that's called. The city's only doing it in high crash corridors, so if there's been a certain X number of crashes, but that doesn't prevent us from asking. I mean, if we don't ask, we don't get it.
There's a lot of retired people up there that don't move very quickly. Their dogs or whatever, walking their dogs, and it's a real issue.
Baby J's route.
Is it super unpopular to get that changed on a citywide level? 'Cause I
It is
seems
city,
like everyone should be in favor of like saving lives over traffic volume in general.
like I said, there's a lot of people don't even know they can turn, they didn't think
Yeah.
drivers in, they don't even know they can turn right on red, but then they discover it. And because once people get going, they just zoom.
All right. We gotta keep on going here. Stadium Oversight Committee, Jerry?
I was not in town.
Good summary. No.
I hope you had a good vacation. Horace and I were available for that meeting, but the snowstorm canceled that meeting. Do you remember that? And so they rescheduled. I did get an email from one of the staff at the Timber Stadium, but they also mentioned that Ken Puckett is on extended leave. Something might have. So it sounds like a stay tuned situation. Yeah, I don't know.
So, my understanding is that Ken has some serious health issues. Which I can kind of believe. He's a really big guy.
Is he in charge of the stadium?
He's the facilities manager. It has nothing to do with the sport teams. And not much to do with marketing, but
But it is
he
city property.
knows, yeah, he knows that the building and the surroundings like the back of his hand. He's good. He's been there for a very long time.
Did you get a rescheduled date at all, or because of his health consideration, like are they kind of waiting?
I have not seen, I missed a whole bunch of communications because I was kind of like,
On vacation?
way out of video contact.
Their opening day, February 27th, had 22,000 people show up. It was a success. And I told Forrest to put that in our newsletter because that is a good sign for our community that people are traversing to our community, enjoying our community, going to that game. And we all know what it looked like 3 years ago, right? It's apocalypse.
The game on the 15th, like it reminded me of old Portland. Not like in a good way, like
Yeah.
people were out in the streets and.
Yes. And so
I think I was at that one.
Did you go to the tap room? I feel like I thought I saw like all everyone.
this is a good feeling. And I do think we should get back to that good neighbor agreement. And there's nothing bad that we want to change on the good neighbor agreement. It's just there's new people now a part of that. They restructured. You saw on the news, you know, about the whole timbers situation debacle. So there's a lot of fresh faces, people that stepped in those positions. They're not even knowledgeable of the good neighbor agreement. Then we've got Northwest District that would like to re-engage because they're having issues with the Uber situation over there and the backflow of people over there and trash that way. That's okay. So that means let's get back to the table. Let's just make sure we understand the working agreement, which I gave you a copy of. I think I remember correctly, right? Yep, I did. Okay. Just for the record, so we could revisit it. And then also too,
Which one I can't write that
Oh,
down.
sorry, Secretary of the Budget, you don't like people recording.
I do.
Oh, you're so sorry.
In the
Yeah.
parking plan for the stadium, there was 3 pickup drop-off sites for Uber.
Yeah.
2 of them were also construction sites. One of them was at Lincoln, the other one was at the Arts Building.
So it's probably getting a lot of
So-
pressure on this third
so-
site right here, right?
Both of those will come back into service this year. So that's something to look forward to, and actually to look forward to enforcement doing something about folks ignoring them.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a good meeting to be at, you know, just to reengage. And I was talking to, the officer, is it Brooker or no, our new sergeant, NERC team sergeant, Mike, what's Mike's last name? Sorry, I'm tired tonight. Anyway, our new acting sergeant that took over for, I'm done with names tonight. Okay. He said that good neighbor agreement is one of the only respected good neighbor agreements in the city. And that's amazing. Like that just for good, Goose Hollow to actually have one that's upheld. Right? It's
Yeah.
worked and we need to reengage with it. And last for the record too is, kind of piggyback to our neighborhood is a part of that good neighbor agreement is they're in charge of the trash, right? 22,000 people come in and they go out. What happens? Area gets trashed out, but also too, you want to make sure that the area looks good for those 22,000 people because you don't want people to come in and go, gee, you saw it looks like a big trash can. And so they're responsible for that trash too, just like McDonald's is as well and stuff like that. And so we need to reengage with that because they stopped sponsoring that. I talked with the CEO CEO of Paul, but we can talk about that later. Sorry. But last.
This is way off the.
Are we that bad? Good, last,
Yeah.
you guys, it's Earth Day, April 17th. And this is where, I reached out to one of our Goose Hollow folks, so she's here. It's the folks from Georgia. I was hoping that they could lead.
Brad and Tracy.
Yeah, Brad and Tracy, like give them a job to do. They wanted some help out with the livability board, but that's coming up this next month and our neighborhood should chip in, even if all of us could take and fill up a trash bag for Earth Day. We had a successful Earth Day right before COVID. Do you remember that video? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I'd like to do that again. So if especially if right now with our good neighbor in flux right now, we need to pick up trash. Okay, so.
Thank you. And so April will have another thing to add to our calendar. Next is planning and zoning. Jerry or Scott?
We've got no new activity.
Okay.
That's not entirely true.
Oh. Hold my leg.
The same folks that built that beautiful canopy on the east side of the stadium are digging a really, really big hole a block to the east of that canopy. And that's that and the fact that the school district's contractors are busily digging another hole for their stadium. So we got lots of holes.
There's like so many inappropriate jokes you could make, but I know we're on recording, so
Yeah.
lots of holes being dug in Goose Hollow.
So next is Neighbor West Northwest update. I'll be I'll try to be pretty short there. Sad news, everybody. We did not get that grant for the bags. And we did not. I'm trying to understand why. I don't know what the guidelines for grants are. I'm trying to find out what those guidelines are. So I reached out to Darlene and Alan and kind of trying to understand that. I don't know who selects the grants. So I'm trying to understand how those people will get chosen, because there's 4 or 5 grants, which I think are 3 neighborhoods in our region that get those grants.
Bring in a miss, and we can always dust it off, maybe enhance it next year.
Yeah. Well, that's what I think. We need to understand better what the criteria are, because there was $12,258 in grants, $12,250 that were given, and Goose Hollow got a 0. So this is the reason for us not getting the grant. And this is the totality of the reason. Good idea, comma, but lacks clear path to engage entire community.
Rocks.
Okay. Wait, listen, I haven't done that.
Yeah, I don't know.
It says blacks.
If you
Blacks.
want to store them anyway.
Don't they mean blocks?
Lacks clear path to engage entire community.
Well, we did put it together in like, I mean, you put it together in just a few days.
Well, I mean, but everybody gets bags, so I don't know about the entire. Anyway, so,
Was it the totes and the postcards?
so
Or just the
let me,
totes?
the totes. And this, there may be some nuggets here, I don't know. So here's what the grants were given out and not given out. So someone requested, and I don't even know who this is, and I asked to get more specificity. 13th Street Food Market. Sounds like a good idea, but lacks specifics or focus on way to engage the neighborhood. So I think one of the big issues here is how to engage as many people as possible. Maybe they got 0. AHNA cleanup, Arlington Heights Neighborhood Association cleanup, $1,600 for a cleanup. We do cleanups all the time, right? So that's an avenue. Coho Theater got $1,350. I assume that's the Northwest Neighborhood Association, but it doesn't really say who that is. But that's my assumption because that's where Coho is. But it doesn't say what that was for. But the theater got $1,350. Friendly House got $1,900. It's a good cause. I'm not sure what they're using it for, but they got $1,900. Forest Park Cleanup got $800. So cleanups are getting money.
Okay.
Bingo.
Maybe we use the tote bags for
If they clean.
a cleanup.
Cleanup.
If they do earthing, they get a tote.
Yeah. Goose Hollow swag got 0. Hillside Neighborhood Communications. Once again, communications. Reminder of all timelines, good idea, apply for more funding. They asked them to apply for more funding for communications. They received $500. So communications, there's another one coming up.
Garbage and comms, okay?
Lift Up Communications, and it doesn't say who applied for this, which neighborhood applied for Lift Up, which I think is a nonprofit to do communications, got $1,200.
Wow.
Linton Newsletter, get this, $1,500 for a newsletter. Old Town, and it doesn't say what is used for, but it says good plan. Anyways, Old Town Juneteenth, these people are not fans of Juneteenth, so $0. Old Town Tree Wells, apparently they don't like tree wells. $1,900 for trees in Old
But
Town.
they already got funding from Prosper Portland.
From Prosper
for all the tree wells. 2/3 of all the money that should go to protecting our small businesses with bars on windows went to the tree wells.
Yeah.
Why would they get that?
So not to begrudge anybody, but once again,
On the record.
I'm trying to understand how all this works so we can get equity when it comes to
We're
this
the
stuff.
only neighborhood that didn't get anything?
No, there's, well, I don't know, 13th Street.
Usually our neighborhoods are doing it where they can.
Yeah,
This
there's,
is all west side though, right?
there were 3 neighborhoods this is all neighbors west and west. Old Town Tree Wells, well, I mentioned that. Swirl got $1,500. It doesn't say what for. So I'm like, what do they get the money? All these people have great ideas. I just want to understand why we can't give bags to people to come attend our events, which I think is very good. So, but I do think, we do need help with the newsletter. I do think that we need help with communications. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And Tim, you personally, hope you come back. We'll try to have good communication so you know exactly where our meetings are and all that kind of stuff, which might change. Stephanie, I did not mention you earlier. Thank you so much for all this. Stephanie Cameron from the MAC Club is certainly giving us free space, which we should ask for a grant so we can have space. And that's the updates. We didn't really do much Neighbors West Northwest. We didn't get a forum this last time around. But the grant thing I think would be important for people to know, and the coffee with officers was also discussed. And I want to open it up for any general thoughts, questions, additions. Anybody?
Do you have one addition to add?
Mhm.
The dollar amount that was missing from the February minutes.
Thank you.
I do have that now. Thank you. And that total was for the deposit of 2 checks, which total $29.93.
So we have all the information we need. There's a couple updates to the notes, taking Lori off and that such stuff. I think we covered that as well. So do we have a motion to accept last month's? That's so moved. Seconds. All in favor say yes, aye, something.
Aye.
Any no's? We got all hands raised online. Any abstentions?
I totally don't know what's happening, so all of a
There you go.
Hey, I did the notes last month, how they look.
Yeah.
And that's a good sign.
So yeah, and that concludes our meeting then. If we have nothing, thank you,
Oh,
everybody. Don't worry.
I just wanted to say something,
Go ahead,
if I can.
Of course.
Are you good on location? I mean, are you, like, next month, will it be in this conference room again, or do you?
That's the plan right now. Thank you, Lori. Is to be in this conference room because of, we can do hybrids from here in the size. We can only fit like a dozen people in here maybe, but we do have really good hybrid capabilities here and we hear everybody clearly. I think starting in May, we should be going back to the max space and maybe cookies.
Oh, I know, that's why you like the others.
I think all their committees have now chosen times and places, so we should be able to shoehorn ourselves in if possible. Yeah, is that?
If any of you MAC members want to pressure any of the committees to do meetings hybrid, then, there'd be a space for y'all. So don't try to put peer pressure on one another.
I was born for this.
We're born for peer pressure. Excellent.
Almost all your conference rooms hybrid capable at this point.
Probably not all, but I would say that there's at least 3 that are. And then, this one's available, but it's, it's not cool being in the clubhouse. I know.
And Laura, just to make sure, does that answer the question or did you have?
Yeah, it does. I was just gonna say, there's plenty of space at my condominium to hold a meeting like this. And we did recently upgrade our Wi-Fi here at my building. So if you were interested in testing out the capability, I could arrange that if people would like a bigger space to meet in. I think the hybrid would work with the upgrades we've done on our Wi-Fi, but I'm not really a techie person, but would be happy to help facilitate someone testing it. So it's up to you all. I'm happy to attend virtually until we get, a more semi-permanent solution.
So we have an offer, Stephanie, if you don't want to do the overtime, just let us know.
It's totally up to you all, whatever works best for the group.
Well, I have to say from a technology standpoint, so thankful because in the past we had to juggle it at the art place. See Lori, if you look on the tables, there's all these great devices that help carry our voices across.
Okay. Yeah,
Here, and then here, and then this great speaker says, I'm just so thrilled with this setup. This is exactly.
Well, and it goes back to our overarching theme,
Yeah.
like hearing you talk about the grant lists, like comms are a thing.
Yeah.
And I think people have these expectations of this volunteer group that we provide the Zoom, that we record everything, that we all bring our laptops and do things in real time. And that's not a realistic expectation of like a little neighborhood association without the help of like an organization like the MAC. We can't put that on, the Oregon Society of Artists, and even managing the elections, like poor Lori went above and beyond. Like Scott and I were running around like crazy. So we want to offer it, but we have to be realistic about what's available to us and who is available to volunteer to facilitate these kinds of things.
Yeah, it does seem to be working well. I just thought I'd toss it out. So do you all have like a screen there? It looks like you're looking towards something.
Yeah.
We got a big old TV.
Oh, okay,
There's a
well,
bar
great.
with a camera and all kinds of glowing green and red lights in this room.
Oh, cool. Okay, well, glad it's working.
Hey, Vadim,
Yes.
could you turn on the camera on your laptop and then point the camera toward the screen so we see what the setup is?
I'm from my,
Good point,
oh yeah, because
Alexa.
I'm on here.
Yeah, since you're on here, just turn on the camera and then, turn it
Look at this, how
90
big it is. Look at this thing.
counterclockwise.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
just there for scale.
Yeah.
There you
We
go.
have a TV, we have a bar underneath it with a camera. And then we have several microphone things and a big microphone over there, but also ones on the table that are glowing, which means hopefully they're working. Yeah.
Yeah, the audio is pretty good.
Where are the cookies?
Yeah.
Once again, thank you, everybody. I know I was kind of a little bit lighthearted with or levity with grants. I think the grants are very important, but I also think that, it'll help us a lot here with the amount of money that we have to get some of those. So it's all meant in jest, but if we can learn something from these other organizations that are getting those grants, let's do it. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Tiffany, slow down.
Okay.